Hello and welcome to this presentation on the best practices and UX trends in the US. My name is Katie. I am a key account manager at Perfection, and we are a UX research consultancy. So let's talk about localization in the US for UX design to get started. What is localization? Localization is the practice of adapting interfaces not only based on the language, and so that's really key to note, it's not just translating from one language to another, but also adapting with respect to the specific cultural nuances. And by doing so, the site or application really ensures that it responds to the expectations of the users. So here we are going to look at some of the specifics of UX design in the US. Before we dive into the UX design, let's take a second to analyze the culture. So we can certainly observe that there are various differences from one country to another, each with its own unique culture. This is well illustrated here below by the Dutch researcher Hofstede, who created this system allowing us to compare and analyze different cultures. So here what we're looking at is a comparison where we observe the differences between the US and France. In addition to those cultural differences, we also know that each culture has its own way of expressing themselves and communicating. So are they more emotionally expressive or emotionally unexpressive? Are they confrontational? Do they avoid confrontation? And what's really important and interesting to note here is that we see that the US is really on its own. So something important to keep in mind for all of our UX design. So a brief overview of what we're going to speak about during this presentation. We're going to start looking at the search for efficiency. Then we'll take a look at consumerism and how this translates into UX design. And lastly, we will wrap up with some important nuances to pay attention to. So getting started, the American user has no time to waste. According to a study from Content Square titled the UX International Map, comparing the US with 6 other countries, so comparing the US with the UK, France, Italy, Germany, China, and Japan, we see that the click rate, not only the click rate on product images, the click rate on product description, and the click rate on delivery and shipping information is significantly less compared with those countries. However, the American user does have a higher conversion rate, both on mobile and desktop, and the American user also spends more time on the homepage. So what does this mean? The American user knows what they want. There is a lot of competition in the US, and these standards are very high. In the US, we have Amazon, Apple, Google, a myriad of others. And the American user is accustomed to a certain level of associated services. So delivery, product return, etc. And for these reasons, this is why the American user has truly become an expert in online shopping. And if we just quickly compare with France, the French user will spend 60% more time reading the product description information. So how does this search for efficiency translate into interface design? A great example here is Google, so the preferred search engine in the US. And we see that you have one page, one feature, one message. Google is incredibly simple to understand as there's only the search bar. And if we compare this to Yahoo Japan, which is the preferred search engine in Japan, this page has a lot more going on. Yes, they have a search bar, but we also see all of the categories listed. It makes the page a little bit more intense, a little bit heavier. whereas the American user prefers a minimalist design. So again, looking at Google, we see a lot of white space, simple information architecture, and few color combinations. If we look at another example, so let's look at McDonald's, comparing McDonald's US and McDonald's France. So the US version on the left, we see that it's more spacious, the architecture is simpler, each section is the size of the screen, and the calls to action are clear for the user. The French version, we see that components are side by side and there's more color. Here we're looking at two examples of the Nintendo website, US and France. So the US, we see that again, it's more refined, more simply organized. You have that white background. And looking at France, it's a bit more dense in terms of color. The information is at times side by side and perhaps a little bit more difficult to understand. In addition, or a key component to this search for increased efficiency is faster navigation via the search bar. So comparing the US with 6 other countries, the Americans really prefer to navigate with a search bar. We see that both the Americans and the US and the UK are more likely to use a search bar compared to these other countries. And in China and Japan, the slideshow display, is preferred, as it's not easy to search with their characters. And in France, it is the menu option that is preferred. So if we look at these two examples for Sephora, in the US, we see that the search bar is fixed at the top of the page. And if we look at the France example, you have to click on that magnifying glass in order to open up the search bar. And again, here we see that France has the hamburger menu option just to the left of the magnifying glass. Taking a closer look at Yahoo, so Yahoo US, we see that the search bar again is at the top, middle of the page, really promoting this efficient way of searching. Yahoo Japan, there is a search bar as well, but we also see that there is a menu along the horizontal, there's a horizontal menu along the top of the page, as well as this vertical menu to navigate through different categories. An example from the banking sector, if we compare BNP in the US and in France. In the US, you have the search bar, which is open, it's ready to be typed into for the user. In France, again, you would need to click on the magnifying glass to then carry out the search. And we see on the left-hand side, there are also the menu options. So another way of increasing efficiency is also to have all of the options regarding choices for purchase on the same page. So looking at these two product pages for Sephora, we see that on the US version, you have both the 8-ounce and the 4-ounce sizes. You just have to click which one that you want on that page. And in France, you have to use the drop-down tab to select which size you want. So on the US page, we see that everything fits on the same screen. And also, again, worth noting that even on the product page, the search bar is ready and available for the American user. Taking a look at Amazon. So in the US, we see that you have all different format options for purchasing a book. So Kindle, audiobook, hardcover, paperback, everything is on the same page. Everything is on the same screen. Comparing that to France, where you need to choose the format, which brings you to a secondary screen, which has that selection menu. The US really saves an entire screen by having all that information in the same place. So we've just reviewed all the ways in which UX design is geared towards increasing efficiency. And now we'll take a look at the role of consumerism in the American culture and how this translates to user interfaces. So here we have two different examples. So we have Sephora and we have Coca-Cola. And on the US versions of both, we see the importance of products starting at the home page. So looking at Sephora in the US, here we see that there are different categories and brands being promoted on the home page. For Coca-Cola in the US, the first thing the user sees is the product, again with this minimalist and very refined layout. White background and calls to action are very clear. Comparing that with France, the Sephora the Sephora app contains more so what's new at Sephora. So at this time, it was the time of year when there were sales. And for Coca-Cola, we see the different rubrics, the different options that you would see on their site. So having products on the homepage not only increases efficiency, but it also is encouraging the user to purchase, to shop from the beginning of their journey. Here we have an example of Burger King. So on the US example, we see that you have all of the different products or not all of the different products, you have different products and offers on the home page. And if you see at the very bottom of the page in that green box, you see the location search. So it's much more discreet. The focus is on the products. And comparing that with France, the first thing the user does when they arrive at the Burger King page is find your nearest location and then go to see the products. Deals and promotional codes also play a large role in encouraging this consumerism. So looking at McDonald's US and McDonald's France, McDonald's US, we see that there is a deals section on the homepage. Also at the menu at the bottom, we see that there are categories for deals and deal codes. Compared to France, where there are not any of these options on the homepage or stuck to the menu at the bottom. Another example of deals and promotions. So for Amazon, whether it be on the homepage or on the Whole Foods Market, we see that the in-store code is always available and apparent to the user. This in-store code does not exist. It's missing from the corresponding French pages, so the French homepage and the Monoprix Market page. Another way of encouraging consumerism is by having additional services. So here for Starbucks, we see that the US example has in the bottom menu has the option to gift something, gift a gift card or gift to someone, which does not exist on the French version. And in France, there are gift card options, but it's just not as prominent. It's not as important to the user as it is in the US. Here we're taking a look at Delta. So these two pages, aside from the language, are more or less identical. The only difference is that in the US, there are two additional services, so Delta Amex and gift cards. Additional services for Amazon. This is also really more of the preference for services that we can observe in the US. We see that under My Account in Amazon, you next have the section for programs and features, which includes today's deals, gift card and registry, and then the subscription program. Comparing this to France, where underneath the Your Account option, they then see the option to choose the category. So in France, it's category, programs and functionalities. In the US, it's programs and features, and then choose the category. So the French are less fond of these deals and subscription services, whereas it is preferred by the American user. Some other additional services that we see with Uber, both France and the US have the Uber ride service, as well as Uber Eats. We see that in the US, however, there's the option to send a package to someone, rent a car, or get to a vaccination center. And those are all for-profit services. In France, the additional services are to rent a scooter or bike. And then there are two services which are not for additional profit. So reserve what time you want your Uber to arrive, and information about public transportation. Here we have the example of FedEx. So just as in the US, in France, you can also ship and send packages. But in the US, we see that there is this additional service that allows the user to design and print, which does not exist in the French version. So paying attention to nuances, here we're really going to take a look at the things to keep in mind and worth noting when designing for the American user. Firstly, impactful regulations. So as we know, regulations vary from country to country. Here we're looking specifically at the checkout. So towards the end of the user journey, when it comes to the actual purchase, the American user prefers to check out as a guest. And the reason behind this is twofold. It is more efficient. It can be quicker to check out as a guest instead of creating a profile or account. And the American user also does not want to have their personal data exploited by the brands with whom they're shopping. It's very important that there is the option for a guest checkout. According to Sales Cycle, without this option, it can result to purchase abandonment of up to 23% in the US. Here are what seems like small details, but they have a big impact. So whether it be AM, PM versus 24 hours, currency, units of measurement, these are really crucial when adapting the UX to the American market, and it's very important to take this into consideration. So if we look at the example of booking a flight, first of all, the date would be month, day, year in the US. The time would be AM, PM, currency, USD, luggage weight, let's say it shouldn't exceed 50 pounds instead of 23 kilograms. And so these nuances, we observe that they are extremely important for travel and hospitality sites and applications, because it can have significant impact on the product description, address details, shipping information, etc. So to wrap up, here we see the table on the left. We see the most downloaded apps, and the table on the right, we see the most trafficked websites. So the first 6 of both of them are sites or apps that are created in the US. So these US interfaces are really at the forefront of the most trafficked websites. So what this means is that even outside of the US, users are accustomed to this American style. So the question that we ask ourselves is, do the Americans define the UX design trends across the globe, Or is the world made up of users that are used to sites backed by American UX design and expect their other experiences to follow suit? Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.